Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for being here early and no need to come on. I am here and available until we get the meeting started. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It is 10 a.m. I don't think we have quite hit quorum yet, so I will say good morning. Happy New Year to everyone. It's great to see you all in 2025 as we continue doing this work. We will give a couple of minutes for others to join us. Keisha, I trust you'll let me know when we are at quorum.
Yes, we only have one on so far.
Okay. Morning, all. Good morning to who all just joined. We'll be starting shortly. We are waiting on the members of the committee to join the call. Good morning, Shanna. Is it Shanna or Shana?
It is Shayna. Good morning.
Dana, good morning. Thank you. Nice to see your face. I sent you an email yesterday and didn't know your face, so I'm glad to be able
Yes,
to see you.
good to meet you too. Happy to be here.
Keisha, have we heard from any of the committee members that they are not able to join today?
Not that I know of. Let me check real quickly.
If you are just joining, thank you so much for being here. We're giving another couple of minutes for additional folks to join.
Anthony, I checked and there aren't any excuse absence requests.
Okay, I think we have half of the committee here. So we likely need one more for a quorum. And I've reached out to those folks by email just now, so we will give it another minute.
Okay.
If we have to, we will move forward with this meeting as information only. Just because we believe that the information that we want to share in this forum is important, and we'll make the meeting available for viewing later. And also, there's one item, number 5 on the agenda that needs approval. And if we don't have quorum when we get there, we will do an email vote to make sure that we are able to stay on track with our goals. So we'll give it one more minute, and then we'll get started. I'm gonna do a very quick off-camera costume change. My office is super hot. You're right back. All right. Um, good morning, everybody. I'm gonna go ahead. Oh, we got somebody coming in. Okay, it's a team member. I'm gonna go ahead and officially call us to order at 10:06 without a quorum for the moment, which would mean delaying the approval of minutes, which you all received, as well as the review and approval of our 2025 scorecard. So we will follow up on those items. I do want to welcome you. Happy 2025 if we have not interacted this year yet. Great to be with you all and see you. I do want to take a moment. There are quite a few new people. This is not typical for this meeting, but because it's a very small audience, I want to take a moment and have folks introduce themselves. There are some new faces representing some different organizations, and so I want to make sure you all get a chance to, if you're able to come on camera for a moment, to introduce yourselves and say where you are joining from, what agency. So I'm gonna just call folks as I see you in my window. So Ricky.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Ricky Gardner, and I am a senior analyst with the Community Development Department, working on the homeless team.
Thank you. Malcolm.
Good morning, y'all. I'm Malcolm White. I am a business service analyst on the homeless team in community development at the city.
Shayna.
Did you say Shayna?
I did.
Okay, I'm adjusting my volume. Sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shayna Carrigan, and I am the Executive Director at the Durham Crisis Response Center. This is not my first rodeo with the Performance Management Committee, so it's great to see some familiar faces. And thank you to Ricky for bugging me to rejoin. We had we were quite the twosome of advocacy, but also
Oh, okay.
also seeing Andrea and Nicole and Jonathan, Tracy, lots of names I remember. So it's great to be back in the circle again.
Thank you. Welcome back, Shayna. Andrea.
Hey, good morning. My name is Andrea Carey. I'm the project director of the data center at the North Carolina Coalition to End Homelessness, or NCCEH. Excited to be here to talk about system performance measures today.
Thank you. Tiara.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tiara, and I am with Families Moving Forward. I'm the Director of Programs and Residential Services. And I was here a couple years ago, and I've been back now a month. So
Excellent.
happy to be
Welcome
here.
back. Welcome
Thank you.
back. Daisha.
Yeah, Daisha Shanks from the North Carolina Coalition to End Homelessness Data Center, and my title was Project Specialist.
Thank you, Daisha. Nicole.
Good morning, everyone. I am Nicole Lamb. I am the program director for coordinated entry and also GPD case management for veteran services.
Thank you, Nicole. Jeffrey.
I'm Jeffrey Rawlings. I'm a senior analyst with community development and the coordinated entry administrator with the city of Durham.
Thank you, Vega.
Happy New Year, everyone. Vega Swepson. I am a resource specialist and instructor at Durham Tech Community College. Also, I'm a HSAC board member.
Thank you. Shantae.
Good morning, Happy New Year. I'm Shantae Addison with where do I work? Housing for New Hope. And I'm the Director of Client Services.
Thank you, Shantae. Keisha.
Good morning, everyone. I am Keisha Barnett, and I am the homelessness coordinator for community development.
Thank you. Jonathan, are you able to? Oh, there you are. Okay.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jonathan Crooms. I'm a veteran service officer with Durham County Veteran Services, and my office helps the veterans of Durham County and their dependents and their survivors with filing claims for VA benefits. Like Shayna, also not my first rodeo with the committee. I'm former chair. I missed a few meetings this fall due to having some changes to my position, and I'm trying to get back and to contribute to the committee as just a regular member at this point. So great to be back, and looking forward to working with everybody, as always.
Welcome back, Jonathan. Thank you so much. Mia, did we get you? Okay, Mia.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mia Phillips, and I am a data center specialist with the North Carolina Coalition to End Homelessness. I'm relatively new to the group, so just happy to help and be here.
Thank you, Mia. And Tracy, did we get Tracy?
Hey there. Good morning. Happy New Year. Tracy Stondino with Alliance Health. I'm Director of Housing Assistance Programs.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So I do believe we are still waiting on one additional member for quorum. We still don't have it, so we're gonna proceed as information only for the time being. If we achieve quorum before we get to the end, we will go back and seek approval for the items that need approval. I want to give a quick moment to acknowledge anyone that may have a public comment. I don't see anybody here that is not a regular attendee. But Keisha, do we have any public comments registered?
I think Keisha had to step out.
No, we don't have any.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. We're gonna skip approval of minutes for the moment. I wanna take a moment and acknowledge we've been doing a lot of work in this committee over the past 3 or 4 months with regard to developing 2025 performance measures for all of our providers in the COC. And you all have been champions with us in getting us to the finish line of selecting all of the measures that will be a part of this year's annual performance evaluations. And we are thrilled to have expanded. We used to do this mostly for PSH and RRH, and we have, through this work, figured out how to incorporate emergency shelter and street outreach programs in our evaluation for this year. So we're very excited about that. To all of you that participated in any of the office hours that we held to get us to the finish line, we thank you. Today is sort of the final step. We've been promising that once we approved all of those performance measures, that you will be able to review them in the new scorecard. Fortunately or unfortunately, I sent it out as a PDF. When it's approved, it will come to everybody as a spreadsheet. And so you will be able to use it with much more functionality. But the PDF is for the review part and approval only. So at this point, we have been talking a lot with the data center about making sure that we all understand when we say system performance measures, what we mean, how HUD reviews the system performance measures. So we invited the data center to come and do a brief presentation. The normal presentation is much longer, but for the purposes of today, we're going to do a very abbreviated one with the idea that if anybody here wants additional information, we will follow up and do a deeper dive. But I want to introduce again Andrea Carey and her team with the data center, who are going to walk us through an overview of system performance measures within our Durham COC. And so take it away, Andrea.
Great, awesome. Yeah, excited to give us a little orientation on system performance measures. And thanks, Anthony. This is as defined by HUD, so we're using their lens on this. We, as a performance management subcommittee, you all are doing things like looking at the system for performance and measuring that. So I know we use a lot of the same words in very different ways in some of this work. So I just want to clarify at the onset that I'm talking about HUD's measures, and that will take us in some places. So oh, I'm gonna share my screen, but I'm having a hard, there we go. Okay. And please feel free to jump in with questions or comments, especially Anthony and the City of Durham team. If you have something you want to point out, please just chime on in.
Thank you.
So let's start with why we are looking at this, what this is looking for. So There's been a big shift over the last 10 years or so, which many of you have been very active in participating in, moving away from individual project performance to more of the system approach, because we all rely on each other to serve clients where they are and eventually get them to a better, more stable housing situation. And so the system performance measures were really designed to encourage that lens, encourage that analysis, and make sure that we are doing the best we can with our very limited resources to coordinate across the system. The main goal that HUD had designed this with, or actually they're congressional, but was really to get to the place where homelessness is rare, brief, and non-recurring. That is kind of their definition of that effective end to homelessness. And one way they enforce this is through the COC competition. So as you've been going through the local performance metrics and the scorecard, of course, that is incorporated into our local competition, but it's also incorporated into the national competition. We are judged against ourselves year over year to see if we are improving the system performance measures, improving the outcomes for people experiencing homelessness in Durham. And we get points for that, or we don't get points for that. So we're going to do some year-to-year comparisons to help anchor us in how that's looking, and really want to just definitely lean on you all for your local expertise and like, what does this mean? Are there things that strike you as we're looking at this information? So summary of our performance measures. There are technically 7 performance measures, but only 6 of them are active right now. No COC has effectively ended homelessness. And so the 6th measure for prevention has not been kind of activated. So these are our measures, and we'll go through defining these and then look at Durham's data in just the next few slides. And I don't know if I can't remember how these are distributed, but happy to share these slides, Anthony, with the group. So if that's needed, let me know how. All right, so let's start with length of time homeless. So this is the first measure from HUD and is really looking specifically at emergency shelter and transitional housing projects. So that is a huge caveat in some ways, right? Because we have such a robust entry point coordinated entry access system, and very like a maturing street outreach system as well. So those folks are not included in this upcoming measure. That's just a disclaimer there for us. And our goal is going to be to reduce the length of time homeless, of course. So looking at the most recent federal fiscal year 2024, these are the average and the median outcomes for the length of time homeless. So we're looking at an average of 81 days in just shelter, and when you combine that with transitional housing, an average of 88 days of that stay. So this is how long is someone enrolled in a shelter or transitional housing program. We can also see that there are a lot of outliers, a lot of folks that are staying for very short periods of time because the median, there's a lot of folks that have some very long lengths of stay because the median is lower than the average. So there's some folks that have 200 days, a year of transitional housing or shelter stay, and that brings up the average. So that including the median helps us see that. All right. The other way this measure looks at information is through self-reported data from the client. So when did an experience of homelessness start? even if they were not enrolled in our shelters. And you can see that goes way up, right? So just an important note that we are building the most robust system possible, and we still are missing time of people experiencing homelessness, right? We don't actually have the shelter capacity to house everyone in that shelter. All right. And yeah, so the average and the median, the average is over a year. This is in days, median getting close to that year mark, unfortunately. Looking year over year, here is data going back to federal fiscal year 2020. And what we are seeing for emergency shelter only, and then emergency shelter plus transitional housing. So kind of during peak pandemic times, 2021, 22, we did have some longer length of stays. I mean, there was some more shelter available. I think that contributes. If you all have other ideas, please chime in. And so our goal is really to reduce this, but I think what this data shows especially is that the system has really been changing, particularly between pandemic time and post-pandemic time, generally speaking. Any questions or comments about this length of time homeless? You're muted.
Thank you. Can you speak briefly to the emergency shelter plus transitional housing, specifically as it relates to the presence or inventory of transitional housing in Durham?
TROSA.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to
And
point.
VOA GPD. Yep.
Yeah, our inventory here in Durham with transitional housing rests with one provider and 10 bids. And those bids are typically occupied over a longer period of time. And so part of the increase that we're seeing, we think specifically around the transitional housing bump, I mean, it's not affecting us a lot because there's only 10 bids, but we do see that increase when you look at the emergency shelter plus transitional housing numbers, because those bids in TROSA are kind of long-term bids.
Yep.
Tracy, I think you have a question.
So this is broken out by fiscal years from 20 to 24. 24 includes 23, 24 because we're in 24, 25, correct?
So this is HUD's measures. So I'm using HUD's federal fiscal year. So apologies, I didn't make that clear. So this is October 2019 through September 2024.
Okay.
Look at the whole span. It's an October to September fiscal year.
Okay. I was just wondering if those fiscal years were along with typical local government or federal. But this is capturing sort of the peaks and valleys in terms of how it fluctuated over this period of time. So it looks as if I'm looking at this correctly, at the gradation of colors, is it 21 that it kind of spiked?
Yes, fiscal year 2021. So if you think about 2020, half of that year was no pandemic, and then half of the year was pandemic, right? With March kind of being our time. So from October to March of the fiscal year 2020, regular operations occurred, and then the pandemic happened, and we had that public health imperative to shelter people and shelter them separately.
So based on this graph, though, it looks as if we've made improvements, though, in terms of the numbers going down and impacting the number of people who are actually in shelter. If we were
Absolutely.
based on this graph. Okay.
Yep. And I think I want to highlight that this measure can sometimes be impacted by the prioritization that's happening for our permanent housing referrals too, right? If we are prioritizing the folks with the longer lengths of stay, then they are those stays end instead of continuing onward, right? So that can also reduce our stays here.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
This is improved by that prioritization process as well. And then I just again want to highlight that the experience of folks is beyond what we see in HMIS. And so we see very similar patterns with the self-reported information from clients. All right, let's look at returns to homelessness. One of the most important measures, because this is, did we actually end the experience of homelessness or did they come back? So this is, again, I'm going to clarify just street outreach, emergency shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing, not coordinated entry. So just that caveat there. And of course, we're trying to reduce the returns, but we do expect there to always be some returns to homelessness because life is complicated and we don't control all the systems outside of homelessness, right? That can impact someone experiencing homelessness. The other thing I really want to highlight with this is there's only so much we can see, right? We can't see all of time, all of a lifetime of homelessness. So the measure looks at just the last 2 years. And if someone exited to permanent housing, did they then represent in a homeless services project? So when we're reviewing this for data quality, we're really looking at, was the permanent housing exit accurate? Did we kind of guess, was it family permanent or family temporary? Sometimes we don't know. So that's something we look at for data quality review. All right, so when we're looking at the returns to homelessness, we have an overall rate of 16.5% for federal fiscal year 2024. And you can see the whole number of permanent housing exits over that 2-year look back, and then the number of returns. So these are the number of people that represented for services after exiting from this project type. Permanent housing here includes both rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So the PH doesn't include other permanent housing projects, OPH projects at all. It's just rapid housing and PSH.
Correct. We actually haven't had any exits from OPH though. So that is, yeah, but yes, it's that. All right. And looking over time, there are some fluctuations here.
Andrea, I'm sorry, before
Sorry,
we
was there a
move from
question?
that slide, Sally asked a question I had, which is, do we know the national average and are we much higher or lower than the national average of returns looking at that 21% line?
From for permanent housing?
Mm-hmm.
Let me just double check those numbers in the background as we look at this.
Great question, Sally. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for that question. You can see over time that again, I think that this, let me know if you all have other thoughts, but I think that this really reflects an increase in resources, right? We had a lot of permanent housing resources in the pandemic period. And so we were able to maybe help folks for a little bit longer. And maybe the rapid rehousing services didn't cut off quite as soon. That's my hypothesis there. But so we do see a decrease in returns, and then we are beginning to increase there a little bit. Any other questions or thoughts on this time year-over-year information? Yeah, Ricky.
Yeah, I think also it's important to note that, during those COVID years, there was a nationwide eviction moratorium. So I think those who would have maybe fallen into homelessness due to inability to pay rent weren't captured. But then as soon as the moratorium ended, I think that's why we're seeing almost a return to pre-pandemic levels of returns to homelessness.
100%. Thank you so much for lifting that up. Sally, in terms of your excellent question about the national average, the fastest way for me to check that, just to make sure I'm not making things up, is this is a Tableau dashboard, and it doesn't break it out by project type. So it's showing us that the national average was 18% for fiscal year 2023. This one, 16% for 22, 18% for 21, and 20% for 2020. So we've been pretty consistently below the national average overall, but I'll have to look deeper into the records for a national average for just permanent housing.
Thank you, Andrea. Great information.
Yeah, thank you. All right, the next measure is the number of people experiencing homelessness. Caveat. So we are looking at shelter and transitional housing enrollments compared to the PIT count here. So this is an annualized number over here on the right of how many people were served in shelter or transitional housing during federal fiscal year 2024. So you can see the comparison between the PIT number and the HMIS. It's really valuable to have an annual number from HMIS. So as you learn about any programs in the community that are starting up shelters, not that I've heard of any, but if there are, we really want them to participate in HMIS in order to get that deduplicated number for this measure, as well as just delivering services. All right, over time, this is going up. And we've only just recently passed the first pandemic year metric there. Okay. No questions or comments there. I'm going to continue. Increases in income. For COC funded programs, HUD is looking at, are we increasing income for clients when we're serving them? This is obviously important. We need both affordable housing and income in order to keep housing stable. So let's take a look here. We've got this information, again, just COC funded projects. So that's our rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing funded by the COC competition, not ESG, not the local housing dollars. We have this divided by non-employment and employment income. I apologize. These numbers are switched. We have, oh no, sorry. So we have stayers who are going to be folks that have an annual assessment. So they've been there at least a year. So we can see at start, did you have income? And then at the annual assessment, that check-in period, once a year has passed, did you increase income? And then the leavers are folks that have an exit within the fiscal year. When we look at this over time.
Andrea, I'm so sorry.
No, please.
So this is saying that 2 adults who are still enrolled in a COC funded permanent housing project increased non-employment income, and 9 adults increased employment income?
Yes.
For all of the COC funded projects?
Correct.
That's a problem.
We have a month to fix it. So if someone does not have an annual assessment recorded, we cannot see whether they increased income or not. So that's a data quality issue. If we have not caught up on annual assessments in HMIS, they're excluded. Their success is excluded and not seen. So this is really an opportunity to shine. I know the community case managers, y'all are working, agencies are working really hard to increase income. And frankly, the non-employment income is especially disappointing because there are cost of living adjustments that should be recorded as an increase for SSI and SSDI. So everyone should have increased income in the last federal fiscal year who got that source of income, which isn't everyone, right? Not all adults in our COC funded programs have SSI and SSDI, but a fair amount of them do. So that to me shows a lack of data entry versus a real performance deficiency. I don't feel as confident talking about that there.
I do think, just so we don't leave it kind of hanging out there that way, Ricky, I think it is an opportunity for us to put a session with all of our COC funded providers together to talk about this. This is one of those office hours where we should do a deeper dive with the providers.
All right. I am pausing that. Any other thoughts on this? I see a couple comments.
Yeah, it was I think we can keep going, Andrea. It was Jonathan saying that soil workers might help in our system, and we agree wholeheartedly.
Absolutely. And just I know this is on your mind too, Anthony. SOAR also has a database to record outcomes, and I think it's called OAT. Is that right? Yeah. So definitely, if you know SOAR workers in your life, they ask them to help with that for sure. I apologize. I seem to have some missing information for this this metric for my year-to-year comparison. So I'm gonna try to.
Are you trying to find that, Andrea? I'd also like to add some context in addition to us discussing just the, the metric in and of itself, is that while many individuals who are eligible for various programs under the umbrella of the COC, SSA is still the determining factor in terms of who is eligible for benefits, and also that process is lengthy. It's not an overnight process. It could take up to a year. Sometimes there has to be an appeal because first it's denied, and so it's complicated because many of our members, while we're trying to get a documented disability on the front end, sometimes that also contributes to SSA's process in reviewing that and determining whether or not someone that is actually eligible for SSI or SSDI. And so I just wanted to kind of provide some context to that it's, and also even with those individuals who may not, even in a household, may not be eligible for SSI, there are sometimes other barriers in which individuals need vocational rehab, if not training to gain new skill sets, that they're gaining employability opportunities as well. So it's a broader context, but it's also in terms of looking at it from not just one perspective, but there are lots of different contributing factors in terms of people that are receiving non-employment income versus earned income.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that context too. Yep. There are many outside factors for our system that we have some control over and not all the control. And we do have control over annual assessments and counting what we have in the system. So want to just encourage us to continue that. All right, I'm going to move forward with first-time homeless here because these other graphs were not complete. I'm going to fix that though and make sure we have that information.
Andrea, if you just send the presentation to me afterwards, once it's fixed, I'll get it out to the committee.
Thank you so much. All right, so okay. Oh, I have to restart sharing. Here we go. So let's talk about first time homeless. This is looking at the number of clients enrolled in our homeless dedicated sheltered projects, shelter and transitional housing, who did not have an enrollment within the last 2 years. So again, we're looking back 2 years into the past, seeing, did we see this person before? And this is really limited by our HMIS kind of boundaries for the COC. So this is only looking at, did we see them in Durham? Just to clarify that part. So how do we look at this? We have an enrollment in shelter. Someone is served this year, one of those 970 people that were served in shelter or transitional housing this year. And we look backwards in time to see if there was a record of them in shelter or transitional housing previously. So really valuable information, but a little bit limited in the scope there. So for this past year, we had 694 folks that we saw them for the first time in shelter, and then combined with transitional housing and other like rapid rehousing before housing move-in dates. Sorry, that was a sentence with too many references to housing. Before a move-in date in rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing is also included here. So we got 832 folks total. So out of, yeah, and that's an increase from the previous year, an increase in 83 when we looked just at shelter and over 100 when including those other project types. And this is increasing slightly, but it is increasing, the number of first-time homeless that we're seeing. And I even hesitate to call this first-time homeless because there's so many caveats there, but this is, you know, new faces, newer faces, at least to our community.
A quick question, again, context to some of this data. Do we know, I mean, other than what you're seeing in HMIS, we wouldn't know we wouldn't have any other information to drill down in terms of demographics or prior residents to Durham County to be counted as a part of this aggregate data, would we?
Yeah, great question. So we have really accessible demographic data around at least the head of household race, ethnicity, gender for this. I could pull that up without knowing what it will look like right now if we needed to. In terms of the prior residents, like were they within Durham County at their last permanent address, that would take a little bit more work to put together. It is conceivable.
Okay. The reason I bring it up is because, again, the triangle is growing. There are a number of people who move to the triangle, Orange, Durham, and Wake County on a daily basis from not only within North Carolina, but from other states. And sometimes the cost of living is not always realized until they're here. Sometimes they were at risk of being homeless before they were here, or even homeless. And so sometimes they become a part of our system, not necessarily organically, but they're moving here and they're losing housing, or they're, again, precariously housed when they're here. So they kind of contribute to that overall number of people who are at risk, if not already facing homelessness.
Absolutely. And we serve all of them. Right. Yeah. So absolutely. Yes, there's that context. And they're once they arrive here, they're all our neighbors. So we do have to yeah. Any other questions or comments on first time? I do think this is helpful as an indicator that homelessness looks one way in our community. There's sometimes some myths around folks that maybe have had persistent mental health or substance use disorder issues for a long time, and maybe been on the streets for a long time or in shelter for a long time. And I think this is one indicator that the myths around the stereotypes around homelessness are not the whole picture, right? Because there are a lot of folks that are coming to us that we haven't identified before. They haven't been in white flag shelter. They haven't been in year-long shelter. So that is one piece of information we can include in the conversation. Yeah, Malcolm.
Thanks, Andrea. And I work with me here because I'm trying to tease this thought out in my head. But I'm thinking to myself for a second that this may exclude some people who are engaged with street outreach, right? Like because this is only based on when someone pops into emergency shelter or transitional housing too, right? Who may have, so there is and while it's cold, right, and white flag counts as emergency shelter, so that would reduce some of that number. There could be some percentage of people who we know are homeless in the community and aren't being counted in this measure because they're never actually landing in emergency shelter and transitional housing, correct?
100%, 1000%. Yes, this is an indicator. This is a slice of the pie. This is not our whole community. And yeah, absolutely. Street outreach not being included in this measure is a huge gap. Oh, there was a question in the chat about DCRC. Shana, thanks for bringing that up. So this is just another big gap. DCRC as a victim service provider is prohibited from entering into HMIS, right? But from the VAWA, Violence Against Women's Act. They are not included in any of this data, right? Our folks staying in shelter with DCRC are not counted anywhere in this data.
We did recently become better at using the HMIS comparable database, and we're using Osnium. So I understand, it doesn't really allow us to, receive funding for emergency services, but to be able to help, paint the picture of what we're experiencing in Durham, if there's anything that we can share data-wise, I'd love to be able to do that.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yes, we could absolutely add some enrollments and pair that together. That's great. Congrats. That's very exciting. Also, you can apply for ESG money, just a heads up. Generally speaking, I'm not a part of the competition or any of the local standards, but yeah. All right. Last measure, Did we do it? Did we end the homelessness of someone that we are serving? This is a measure looking at exits to and retention of permanent housing. And so we are trying to figure out, was there a positive destination from street outreach? Was there a permanent destination from our more temporary services, shelter, transitional housing, and rapid rehousing? And then permanent supportive housing is a little bit special. It's a success. It's a huge win if someone is staying in permanent supportive housing. So that's counted as a success here, and that's why it's split out this way. For federal fiscal year 24, these are our numbers here. And okay. Context. So we have you'll see that the one of the more striking parts of this is permanent supportive housing and the decrease in exits to permanent housing in the last year. This is in part due to some data personnel issues with our HUD-VASH program and keeping that DHA data up to date in HMIS. So there was a little bit of a purge where we didn't know exactly where folks were exiting to. So that's a little bit lower. We are also seeing some decreases in street outreach and the shelter transitional rapid rehousing. I don't know if for those programs in particular, do you all have any thoughts or questions or concerns around that data?
I'm sorry, can I get Sally to elaborate on her comment about the list looking incomplete?
Apologies. That's it. I think, Sally, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's about this SOAR case manager list. There was a question about who was a SOAR contact in Durham, and so I put in the website.
Yes, I think, Andrea, what Sally may be referring to, because I think I heard Adriana mention that the list needs to be updated.
Yeah, and
So Sally, don't worry about it. I have already sent Adriana a message, and when I get an updated list, I'll share it.
Thanks so much. One thing I think I've heard whispered around our meetings in Durham is that HCVs have really decreased in availability, and that has maybe impacted the exit rate for our folks in shelter, transitional housing, and rapid rehousing. I don't know, folks, if that resonates with folks.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Malcolm.
Andrea, what would this look like? It makes me think that emergency shelter being in the same grouping as rapid rehousing would affect exits, would change the data points on exits to permanent destinations. What would this look like roughly if it were just rapid rehousing exits to permanent destinations?
Yeah. Give me 2 minutes. I think I can do it in 2 minutes.
Can anyone beat 2 minutes? Can you do it in 1 minute? You can name that 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I'll run that. It's just a different reporting group here for our system performance measures.
I do want to be mindful of our time. I know, Andrea, I promised you that you could be done and even have time for Q&A after. We did the Q&A during, so that works fine because there shouldn't be a lot of questions following this. But if we can, I want to try to wrap us up in the next 5 minutes, if we can.
I will get back to you, Malcolm. But yes, that would we expect a higher exit to permanent housing destination for rapid rehousing versus shelter. All right, context for exits to permanent housing. We also submit some data quality information per project type to HUD with system performance measures, and I think it's helpful to see this as a part of the context for these results. So I mentioned we've had some data personnel issues with permanent supportive housing. This reflects that. I think the other thing to consider is that shelter did go up quite a bit this year in terms of that exits to complete exits. Do we know where they were sleeping the night that they left shelter? We do expect that there will be some missing data just due to the nature of, sometimes folks don't say goodbye before they leave our programs, but we want to reduce that as much as possible. Yeah, Ricky.
So Andrea, the 84% error rate for PSH?
DHA?
Ah, okay.
Yeah, we've had some conversations about HUD-VASH and making sure we have some dedicated personnel, and we're working on that as a COC. I don't want to there's some really good prospects for more stability there.
Yes, and because that has come up, I just want to add that as a system for the benefit of the people witnessing this going, what the heck is DHA doing over there, right? For the benefits of the system, we have been in touch with DHA, and we have developed a plan which was included within our COC application for remedying this high error rate, which includes representatives from the data center through a rapid response team helping DHA to remedy this error. So it's not just an error hanging out there. It has been discussed, and there are solutions that we are working on as we speak to help to remedy that. And we expect those efforts to start later in January or February. So as we go throughout the year, if we see a similar report later, you should see this number correcting itself. Thank you.
Thanks so much. All right, and that is it. We so I think this is a really exciting opportunity to familiarize yourselves with HUD system performance measures. I'd love to check back in with you all on our progress throughout federal fiscal year 25. As I mentioned, the deadline for submitting system performance measures is at the end of February. So if your agency maybe was a part of a project type, then you're like, that didn't seem quite accurate. Run an APR for October through September and see if there's any corrections that can be made for your project. All right, thanks so much.
Thank you. Andrea, you still have 1 minute, so I want to make sure everybody got any questions out. Are there any last minute thoughts or questions for the data center team before they officially wrap?
I was following along and making note. After number 5, first time homelessness, and 7 was exit 2 and retention to permanent supportive house or permanent housing. What was number 6?
Great
Or did I
question,
miss
Tracy.
that?
I got it.
Great question. Yeah.
There are 7 measures, Tracy. Number 6 doesn't apply to us at the moment.
Oh, okay. I was
So
like,
only 7 are listed, but 6 is absent because it doesn't apply.
Gotcha.
At the point at which we actually end homelessness and move into prevention and it does start to apply, we'll put that back on the presentation.
Yeah,
okay.
and it's not available for any COC across the country. Like no one has been able to activate that. It's a success for diversion measure, but I doesn't even know how to measure that at this point. So
Okay.
down the line.
Okay. I was taking notes along the way and I said, did I miss
You
six?
can absolutely count, Tracy. That is not wrong. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else with any last minute thoughts or questions? Perfect. Thank you so much, Andrea, Mia, Daisha. Your team rocks, and we look forward to seeing you very soon as always.
Thanks so much. I'll send you those updated slides.
For the purpose of the committee, we are now at quorum. So I do want to go back and invite us to approve the December minutes. These were sent to you, gosh, we sent them early this time. They came out a little while ago. I don't even remember when they went out, but it was a few days ago at least. So for the committee members who are here, if you would take a moment, if you have not already, to please review those. We will be seeking a motion for approval of the December minutes or discussion where necessary. And when anybody is prepared with a motion, please go ahead.
If there's no discussion, I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes for December 2024. I think that's December 12th, 2024.
Thank you, Vega. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Thank you so much. For the committee members only who are here, please vote yes in the chat to approve the minutes if you agree, or no or abstain. Thank you so much, Shanna. That is like music to our ears. We appreciate you. Thank you. And thank you, Ricky. Thank you. The minutes are approved. Our last item, I believe, well, not last item, second to last item on the agenda is review and hopefully approval of our scorecard. So talked a little bit about this at the beginning of the meeting. This did go out the other day along with a resend of the minutes. And I want to make sure that all of you had a chance to review it and to go over it a little bit. So I will take a few minutes and kind of recap it here and go over what we did. It will be familiar to all of you that participated in the office hour sessions. Let me get to the right screen. Okay, you all should be seeing this thing that says 2025 Project Performance Review Tool. Thank you, Shana. This is a scorecard. So we went through a series of meetings. We started with a reboot of the Performance Management Committee in terms of reviewing the charter information and what the committee will be responsible for. And on an annual basis, this committee is responsible for setting out the performance goals for the continuum for the coming year. In addition to setting these goals, it is this committee's job to monitor and evaluate them, to recommend performance improvement plans on agencies that might not be performing up to the goals, or to highlight the successes of organizations that are. So that first step is an annual review of our scorecard and goals. Many of you will remember that this was a function that Lloyd Schmeitler did. He sends his regards. I had lunch with him yesterday, by the way. And so I really wanted an opportunity to immerse myself, and in the process of educating myself and with Ricky as a newer employee here at the city, we thought we would do the same with the committee, just so that we start with a level setting movement going forward around how we do this process. So this time of year, every year, we'll be going through this process. So we've already had a series of office hour sessions where we agreed on what the metrics are. And the final step is today, where you actually see that information play out in the form of the scorecard that will be available to the projects that will self-evaluate. Now, some of you, even as committee members, have projects. And, you know, in the past, when you're applying for funding, this is a part of that. we have now moved a little bit beyond just the funding application process for this to a regular monitoring and evaluation of how your project's doing. And again, this was prior to this year, it was for primarily rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing projects. Now we are adding street outreach and emergency shelter projects to the mix. So, let's go through a little bit of what this looks like this year. So we've simplified, again, as we always try to do the instructions. This scorecard will be used to evaluate the programs I mentioned for 2025. We try to do it semi-annually in the spring and fall. The spring is usually a performance check. And then in the fall, it becomes a part of evaluating applicants for COC funded competition where appropriate. Okay. So we estimate the tool whenever agencies use it will take 30 to 60 minutes. For some, you'll see it probably won't take that long. And for others, it may take up to the max of an hour, but it's really been simplified to make sure that that agencies are not lamenting this process. I hope you can you all see the tabs at the bottom of this? Okay, perfect. So the first tab is the instructions tab. These other tabs that follow are the actual project type. So SO projects will be street outreach projects. ES families is emergency shelter for families. ES singles is emergency shelter for singles. So in the case of a UMD that has both single and family rooms, they may want to evaluate both of theirs. And it is up to them to do that, to be aware of how they're performing on both sides. Then RRH projects are rapid rehousing projects, and PSH projects are permanent supportive housing projects. Quick caveat for those of you that are RRH and PSH and have been doing this for a while, not much has changed. In fact, very little has changed. So this is mostly to orient this committee on the new process and the added project. So I'm going to spend our time this morning for the next 5 minutes or so going over the new projects, and then we can take a quick look at the recap if you want for the others. So for street outreach projects, there are basically 6 questions. I know this is small. I'm sorry about that. There are basically 6 questions that we're asking folks to look at that tie into those performance measures that you just heard Andrea talk about from her. So this one, not so much. This is the number of persons engaged in street outreach. This means that if street outreach has connected with 100 people, that we would like engagement of at least 60 of them. Meaning that while they're building trust with some, we're hoping that people are giving their information, being willing to be a client as a part of our COC, and being willing to engage with street outreach and share information that goes into HMIS so that we can appropriately track and make sure people are having access to services and being served in the way that they should be as a part of what we offer. The next measure is exit destination. So what happens when people leave street outreach? Where do they go? And this is for those engaged persons, not for everybody. So I guess that's another thing to say. We want 60 of 100 people to be engaged, or 60% of street outreach clients to be engaged. All the other measures are based on that engagement, not on the whole lot of people that have contacted street outreach. So how many people who leave street outreach are going to permanent housing destinations, or positive housing destinations, sorry. Positive housing destinations for street outreach looks different than they do for other project types. For example, somebody going to stay, whether temporarily or permanently with family, is a positive destination for street outreach, but somebody leaving emergency shelter going to stay with family temporarily is not a positive destination. Because the goal is to get those folks in permanent housing. You heard Andrea mention also income, and we saw a kind of a very low number of people increasing their income. Well, we want to know about that even within street outreach. You know, have workers in street outreach been able to engage and work with clients to help them increase either their non-cash or employment income? The next measure is non-cash benefit sources. So this is defined as like TANF, and what else, Ricky? My mind is drawing a blank.
SNAP,
SNAP, thank you.
WIC. Mm-hmm.
Any of the non-cash benefits that they are able to access while in the care of street outreach, we want to know about it. Same with health insurance. We want to know about people who have been put on Medicaid or been able to access or tap some other resource. So the last one is the average and median length of participation in days. And specifically, these titles are how they appear on the COC APR report in HMIS, which is where this data comes from. So as long as all the projects are properly used in HMIS, they will be able to run a simple APR report and get all of this information calculated for them. And they will pick from that and place into this document certain numbers that will calculate their overall score on the scorecard. So we're not looking at everything that's available. We're looking at what we believe are the most important measures to determine if a program is moving its clients and itself in the right direction. So that is the bulk of what Street Outreach will report on its scorecard to help the system understand how it's performing. And our team is here in full almost today. Our team will be looking at this on some incremental regular basis and working with the providers through TA to make sure they are also, we're asking the providers to do this semi-annually. That's not going to change, but we may be looking at it more frequently. And if we're watching trends or anything that comes up, we will definitely be reaching out to the providers to support in any way we can to make sure everybody's moving along on track. Are there any questions about the measures for street outreach? Perfect. Likewise, this is the first time that we're asking emergency shelter non-RR8 and non-PSH projects to evaluate themselves. So similar to street outreach, there's 6 questions. They vary a little bit. So I'll go through it really quickly. We're starting in this case with exit destination. How many of these people are leaving to go to positive housing? How many people are increasing their income? How many are accessing non-cash benefit sources and health insurance? How long are people staying in the project before exiting the housing? And then unit utilization. So this is a particular big one that I just want to highlight. We are concerned about the things that increase length of stay in shelter. And so we are, and also that to ensure that we are making the most out of the capacity we do have. So what this measure is saying is that on an average basis, at least 85% of your rooms or beds should be occupied on any given night. There's no reason why most of us in this system wouldn't experience nearly 100% of utilization, but this is just a measure to alert us that if it drops below 85%, something's going on that we need to be aware of. So, are there any questions about and this is the emergency shelter for families tab. The only real difference I think between this and singles is if you look at utilization, this is the percentage of rooms for families. Whereas when I click over to the singles tab, it's average percentage of beds occupied versus rooms occupied. That's the difference. All the other measures are the same. The only distinction in families versus singles in terms of average and length of participation in days is that families typically have 90 days and singles would typically have 60 days. That is the typical time frame that we're shooting for in our system. We do realize these numbers are higher. We're going to measure ourselves against this to see how we're doing and make any adjustments next time that we feel like might be necessary. But if you're in a family shelter, you should be thinking about your exit within 90 days as quickly as possible up to 90 days. And in single shelter as quickly as possible up to 60 days. Any questions on emergency shelter scorecards for families or singles? So I really love when there are no questions because I feel like I'm doing a really good job. So if there are no questions and I'm doing a bad job, somebody please tell me. All right. The other two are the rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing projects. These are virtually identical to what any of these projects have already done in 2024, just updated for 2025, but the actual measures and stuff haven't been updated. We just updated the scorecard to include the other projects. There was one measure, I think, that went from 96 to 97%.
It's in PSH and it went from 95 to 96. It's
Thank you.
component 1, question 1.
Yeah, there was one question in permanent supportive housing where we increased it from 95% here to 96%, and that is because when we were doing the COC application, looking at this measure for HUD, they were asking us to explain anything below 96%. And so we said we just need to increase the measure so our providers know that we want to shoot for 96%, but it was already 95. So and we met this measure, by the way. So it wasn't an issue for our system. So with no questions presented, I will stop sharing. Again, you all got this as a PDF. As soon as it is approved, it will be made available to our providers. It is going to be super early this year. We are hoping to, if this is approved, complete the first performance review sometime in mid to late February. And this committee will then receive a report back on the outcome of that evaluation. And the next step will be to determine whether or not, based on those evaluations, performance improvement plans are necessary and how we want to proceed as a committee in the work required to direct the system the way it should be going. So I want to, Ricky, please.
Thank you, Ethan. I just wanted to say when we do review the project evaluation information in February, it's going to be based off of calendar year 2024 performance. So
Yes.
we'll be looking at January 1 through December 31st, 2024.
Yes, and as a caveat, we're going to ask you for approval of this. The only thing that might change is if we go back and put something in the instructions that says your source is 2024 data or some version of that. But we will not change anything material to this scorecard unless it is just an enhancement to the instructions. So I want to say that just to give us a little bit of grace in case we realize we missed something in the instructions part. Okay, so at this point, I will entertain a motion from a committee member to approve the 2025 scorecard for the Durham COC?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2025 scorecard for the Durham COC.
Thank you, Shantae. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Vaughn. If you agree, please vote yes in the chat, or no or abstain as appropriate. Thank you so much. We did receive approval of the scorecard. I want to appreciate you all so much. This was quite an interesting journey. I think we did it a little bit differently than has been done in the past. And I hope that you all feel good and complete with the process that we went through to get here. And we will keep the work moving. At this time, I just wanted to do a very quick review of committee next steps. So I think part of them I've already talked about, but for the purpose of the committee in January, we have reviewed and approved the scorecard. In February, we will have the first semi-annual performance evaluation. And then in March, we will approve the performance improvement plans where necessary, if necessary, and recognize any outstanding performance. And then the next big milestone will be in May when we do our annual Housing First evaluation. These two things used to occur pretty simultaneously or within pretty tight proximity. We spaced it out a little bit this year. There was no need to add the pressure of the Housing First evaluation within a couple of weeks of the other one. So we spaced it out to give ourselves some breathing room. So that is the work of the committee over the next 3 months. And so we will continue that process. Any announcements or questions that anybody want to lift up before we get to the end of our meeting? Tracy, please.
Yes, just a quick question for clarification. You said the first of the performance evaluations will be due in February. So how much in advance will you send that out, or is it after February? I'm sorry, just provide
No, now that the scorecard has been approved, within the next couple of days, it will go out to all of the related projects, and they will have it, in advance. We believe that the first semi-annual evaluation, we said February. We didn't say when in February. So right now we're thinking it's mid to late February. So everybody will get this scorecard basically at least 6 weeks in advance. You can use it as much as you want to assess your data, to look at where you think you might have performance issues, and to try to remedy anything that you think might come up, as often as you want throughout the year.
So those will go out towards the end of January, probably?
No, like next week.
Next week, and
The
you're saying
scorecard is going out real soon. I would do it tomorrow, but I'm going to be out of town.
No.
It's going out real soon.
What's going on with my audio? It seems like you're really low on my end. I'm trying to listen, but is it you're giving agencies 6 weeks to complete it? You said?
Yes.
Okay. All
Well, not 6 weeks to complete it. We're sending it out 6 weeks early. It's only going to take you an hour to complete it. So you figure out when you want to do it. If you want to do it sooner than later, you can, because it will alert you to areas that may come up as challenges for your performance. And it gives you a little bit of time to see if there might be errors on your end, or to see if there might be things you want to try to improve upon before the official evaluation.
Okay.
So it'll be out plenty early for projects to embrace and ask us questions about it and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or announcements that anyone want to lift up?
This is not really an announcement, but just wanted to say to all of our projects who are attending, I highly suggest going ahead and running an APR and just, seeing what your scorecard information looks like, because you may discover, oh, I forgot to do an annual assessment on Mr. Smith. And you can go in and put in that, information and see how it, impacts your score. So it's really just a great tool that we're putting in your toolbox to help you manage your agency's data information in HMIS.
Thank you, Ricky. That's a great point. And the other reason why you might want to do it early is, as brilliant as Ricky and I think we are about this process, we might have made a mistake somewhere that we are not aware of. And you might discover it by running your projects through this tool. You might call us and go, what the heck is this thing doing? It's not making any sense. And if there's a correction we need to make, again, that doesn't materially change the scorecard. We'd be fine with updating it and sharing that with everybody so everybody has a good process. So, any other announcements? All right. Well, thank you all so much. I will entertain a motion to adjourn, though we haven't really needed one lately, because by the time we get to it, people have dropped off the call. But we are a few minutes early, so I will entertain a quick motion to adjourn at 11:27.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Reverend Vaughn. Speaking of Mr. Chair, we are going to need to find a chair of this committee. It should not be a city employee, although I'm happy to fill in. So I want to make sure that we put that out there. Have you all thinking about whether or not you have interest and capacity, or if you know anybody else within the HSAC that has interest or capacity that you think would be good to accept this role. We are doing our best to staff committees very well now from our team to try to lighten the load for the chairs and the secretaries. So please reach out to me if there's anybody that has interest or wants to nominate someone else in the process to be chair. And I'd be happy to lift up a conversation with you or the person that you're referring to. Okay, so we are adjourned officially at 11:28. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you again very soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.